The blender was still running when her photos started syncing. I remember that sound, a sharp metallic whirl, blending frozen bananas and oat milk, while I stood barefoot in the kitchen, waiting for nothing. That was her breakfast ritual. Even though she was 1,300 miles away, the machine kicked on automatically from the timer she set. Every morning, 7:48 a.m. I didn't unplug it. I didn't move. I just stared at the tablet propped on the counter as the screen flickered. New album synced, 54 items. I didn't touch anything for a moment. It was probably beach selfies. Her and the girls with frozen drinks. That same pose with 2 fingers up and a fake laugh. You know the one. I wasn't looking for anything. Not yet. But then I tapped it. And the second image made my throat clench. Not because it was graphic. Not even close. It was subtle. Her knee. His hand. A little too casual. A little too familiar. Cropped from the neck up, like someone had something to lose. Then came the real hit. A burst of 15 images taken in a mirror. Her back arched. His head in the corner, barely visible, sunglasses pushed up, shirtless, holding the phone. Not mine. I didn't blink. I just watched them load one by one, as if the sequence was being printed onto my spine. Her playlist was still playing in the other room. Some indie band I never liked. The blender kept spinning, forgotten. Her robe still hung from the kitchen hook. And I stood there, watching the final hours of our engagement unravel like a thread I hadn't realized was pulled. She had named the album Vitamin C Sweat Droplets. That emoji. That idiotic emoji. It took me another 12 minutes to move. Not because I didn't know what to do, but because, for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't want her to come back. This wasn't jealousy or shock. It was something heavier, uglier, like I'd been force-fed someone else's truth. And yet, the worst part? It wasn't the cheating. It was how happy she looked in every photo, how light she seemed without me. I didn't rage. I didn't call. I didn't even breathe too loudly. Instead, I did something she never saw coming. I picked up my phone and started deleting myself. That afternoon, I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't text her and demand answers. I just stood there, still in my pajamas, with the weight of the blender's fading hum and the photos burrowing into my skull like termites. The house was suddenly too quiet, like it had realized before I did that it didn't belong to both of us anymore. I walked to my desk, sat down, opened my laptop like it was just another Tuesday. But it wasn't. It was a day I'd remember forever, though no one else would mark it on a calendar. The day I stopped being Malcolm and Arlena and became no one. Her passwords. I knew most of them. Not because I snooped, but because she trusted me with them when things were real. Hulu, Spotify, DoorDash, that skincare subscription she forgot to cancel every month. She'd rattle off passwords over dinner, and I'd remember without trying. So I logged in. I went into her email first, then her cloud storage, then her calendar. I wasn't looking for more proof. I had already seen enough to know I'd never look at her the same again. I was searching for control, or maybe just a way to reclaim the parts of myself I didn't realize I had given away. There were hotel confirmations, dinner reservations for 2, a spa appointment under the name L. Dunford. I didn't know who that was, not yet, but I screenshotted everything. Not because I wanted revenge, not in the classic way. I wasn't going to humiliate her or leak anything. That's not who I am. No, I wanted to know how deep the lie went. I dug deeper. Every detail felt like peeling wallpaper that revealed something worse underneath. On the 3rd day of the trip, the day she FaceTimed me and told me she missed me like crazy, she had scheduled a 90-minute couples massage. And then there was the voicemail. She must have thought it didn't send. It was a 5-second audio message tucked away in her deleted folder on Cloud Sync. Her voice was muffled, like she was hiding under sheets. She whispered, "Just stay quiet. I have to text him back." I played it 4 times before deleting it. I think that's when my body finally started shaking. But instead of falling apart, I did something else. I opened a new tab and began erasing every trace of myself from our shared life. Utility bills transferred out of my name. Wedding website deleted. The guest list spreadsheet gone. I canceled the ring insurance, wiped the deposit for the venue, and changed every password I ever used that had a trace of her in it. Even my phone's lock screen, a photo of us at the lake last winter, was replaced with a black square. I was becoming a ghost. Intentionally. Quietly. But ghosts don't vanish without leaving a chill behind. So I wrote her a letter. It wasn't angry. It wasn't poetic. It was short. "Arlena, I saw everything. I'm not angry, just done. You won't find me. Enjoy your freedom. I printed it, folded it once, slid it into the drawer next to her favorite hair clips. And then I packed one suitcase, not the big one, just the carry-on I always hated using, and I left. No goodbye. No post. No closure. Only silence. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. I expected her to call me the moment she got home. To find the note, read it once, then explode with the kind of dramatics she saved for customer service calls and slow baristas. But that call didn't come. Not right away. No missed calls. No angry texts. No, where the hell are you? Flooding my screen. Just radio silence, like the calm before a hurricane you know is forming, but haven't seen yet. I watched her unravel from 700 miles away. No, I didn't stay local. I went somewhere no one would think to look, a rundown cabin in Arkansas that my late uncle used to fish from. No Wi-Fi, barely any cell reception. But I found a nearby town with a cafe and spotty signal, and every day I'd sit there with a black coffee, watching the digital traces of her confusion come to life through the accounts she forgot I still had access to. The first one was the wedding email. It started pinging just before midnight 2 days after I left. Dozens of emails sent to vendors. We need to reschedule. He's having cold feet. Just a misunderstanding. We'll confirm soon. I knew her strategy, control the narrative before the truth slipped out. Paint me as the coward who vanished without explanation, rather than the man who saw through her smile and simply walked away. Next came her Instagram story. A photo of our dog curled up by the window, with the caption, "Waiting for someone who doesn't come home." She wasn't talking about the dog. That much was obvious. Then came the voicemail. I didn't pick up, didn't want to hear her voice live. But I saved the audio and played it later that night, wrapped in a wool blanket while rain slapped against the window of the cabin. Malcolm, I don't know what happened. I mean, I do, but not like that. It didn't mean anything. I made a stupid mistake, and I should have told you. Just come home. Please. We can fix this. I'm scared. That last line hit me harder than anything she said, because she never said she was scared. Not even when she cracked her tailbone ice skating. Not when she lost her job last year. Not when she cried in the car after her mom ghosted her birthday for the 3rd year in a row. Arlena didn't get scared, not unless she lost something she didn't think she could lose. Me. That was the moment I realized she hadn't expected me to leave. Not really. I was safe. Remember? Predictable. Reliable. The kind of man who forgives before asking questions, who believes half answers and eats his own doubt just to avoid a fight. She counted on me staying no matter what. So when I didn't stay, it terrified her. But she wasn't sorry. Not truly. She was sorry I found out. Sorry she couldn't smooth it over before it turned into a fire she couldn't put out. And then came the twist I wasn't prepared for. She reported me missing. I found out from an email, a forwarded notice from my landlord, who was confused why the police were calling about a wellness check. Said Arlena had filed the report and claimed I might have hurt myself. That move wasn't about concern. It was about leverage. She knew disappearing without a word made me look like the villain. So she turned it into a tragedy. Told the world she was worried sick. Probably cried to my sister. Maybe even used that old photo of us on the beach as a way to tug hearts in her direction. And I realized then, I wasn't just gone. I was a ghost she couldn't explain. But ghosts can haunt you in ways that leave no fingerprints. And I was just getting started. By the end of that week, Arlena had gone full crisis mode. Only not the kind where you reflect and apologize. No, she was playing chess, and I could see every piece she moved. I don't know whether it was guilt or strategy, but she was determined to find me. Not to make things right, but to regain control. And I could feel it in every digital tremor she left behind. The first clue came from the shared budgeting app we'd used during wedding planning. I'd forgotten to disconnect it. It was one of those boring tools we used to track expenses, color-coded bars for every transaction. I hadn't opened it since disappearing, assuming it was harmless. But one morning at the cafe, I checked it on instinct. And there it was, a new line item she created, labeled, Private Investigator, Initial Retainer. My chest went cold. She wasn't just looking for me. She was outsourcing the search. I didn't panic, but I did feel hunted. Like prey in a forest I thought I had chosen. I started noticing little things, my phone battery draining faster, the signal acting erratic. That's when I remembered the car. We had installed a Bluetooth-enabled security tracker in our shared SUV, meant for emergencies, stolen vehicle alerts, roadside assistance. I had taken the car when I left. It was mine technically, but the account for the tracker was registered under her name. and she hadn't disabled it. So I drove to a mechanic 2 towns over and asked for a full diagnostic, played dumb, and said the car was acting funny. He found it. Pulled out the hidden module near the rear panel. Disabled. Removed. Just like that, I was invisible again. But then she crossed a line. A real line. She messaged my sister. Not just a "have you heard from him" type of message, but something carefully curated to trigger the exact kind of chaos she needed. She wrote, "I think he's in danger. He's not mentally stable right now. He left after I told him I cheated, and I'm scared he might do something drastic. Please let me know if you hear from him. This isn't about blame anymore. I just want to keep him safe." Safe. She used my word. My sister forwarded the message to me that night with a single question. Is this true? I stared at that text for a long time. Arlena had painted me not just as heartbroken, but as unstable, as a man on the brink, as someone who needed saving, and in her version of the story, she was the one trying to save me. I called my sister, told her everything. The photos, the voice clip, the faked concern. She cried, told me she'd keep quiet, that no one else needed to know unless I said so. She even offered to come to me, but I said no. I had more to do. Because at this point, I wasn't running anymore. I was planning. Arlena wanted her version of the truth out there before anyone could challenge it. So I decided to give her exactly what she wanted. A performance. The next day, I sent one message. Just one. Through a throwaway number I bought at a gas station. You can stop looking. I'm fine. You're free. I won't be a ghost forever, just long enough to make you wish I still was. And I left it at that. No signature. No return contact. Just ambiguity, the kind that sticks to your ribs and makes your breath catch every time your phone rings. She didn't respond. But 2 hours later, I got a PayPal notification. Refund received. $1,250. Investigator services canceled. She wasn't looking anymore. Not because she forgave me, but because she was afraid of what else I knew. Afraid that I hadn't just seen the surface of her betrayal. Afraid that the man she thought was safe might actually be the one thing she never planned for. Someone who walked away quietly, but didn't forget a single thing. By the third week of my disappearance, the cracks in Arlena's carefully crafted image began to widen, and not because I said anything. I hadn't uttered a word to anyone else. I hadn't posted anything, hadn't even left a breadcrumb. But that's the thing about liars who lose their target. They keep talking, and eventually, they trip over their own stories. She started with her inner circle, our wedding party. I knew them all too well. 2 of her bridesmaids didn't like me from the beginning. I was too soft, too boring, not ambitious enough. They smiled at me when I walked into rooms but talked about me when I left them. I was a placeholder in their eyes, a gentle man with quiet routines, who didn't make noise or demand attention. Arlena was their golden girl. And when I vanished, they went into defense mode. First came the group chat. She must have rewritten the narrative at least 3 times in the span of 4 days. I watched it happen, thanks to a little oversight on her part. Months earlier, she had added me to the planning thread and then muted me, forgetting to ever remove me. She assumed I'd forgotten about it too. I hadn't. And now, it was my window into her unraveling. At first, she said I got cold feet. Then she claimed I'd been emotionally distant for months, and the pressure of the wedding had pushed me over the edge. And finally, she landed on the most desperate version. He disappeared because he was afraid I'd expose what really happened. He knows I could ruin him. That's when I knew I wasn't just a ghost anymore. I was a threat, and she was rewriting history in real time. But here's the thing she never considered. I still had access to the master guest list. All 143 names. Their emails. Their mailing addresses. I wasn't going to use it. I wasn't going to air our dirty laundry in public. I told myself I wasn't that petty. But something inside me shifted when I saw how fast she turned me into the villain. And not just to her friends, but to my family, our colleagues, mutual acquaintances. She spun it like a fairy tale where the knight ran off and left the princess sobbing in her tower. I couldn't let her win that story. So I wrote a letter. One single, simple email. No accusations. No anger. Just the truth. Dear friends and family. Out of respect for your time, I want to let you know the wedding between Arlena and myself has been canceled. While personal reasons led me to step away, I believe everyone deserves honesty. A relationship should be built on mutual respect, loyalty, and truth. When those things disappear, so does the future. I wish her peace. Thank you for understanding. Malcolm. I didn't send it from my account. I used a neutral Gmail address. I blind copied everyone. And I waited. Within 48 hours, the fallout reached her like wildfire. People started texting her, not me. Some were quiet. Some sent questions she couldn't answer without unraveling. In one, her cousin Beth posted a cryptic status on Facebook that said, "Sometimes the person who vanishes is the one who is always invisible." It got over 200 likes. Arlena panicked. She pulled down every wedding-related post from her profiles, deleted the engagement announcement, archived the hashtag we'd spent months curating. She told her friends not to talk about it publicly. She blamed me for invading her privacy. And then, on the fourth week, she did something I never saw coming. She showed up at my parents' house. She hadn't spoken to them in months, not directly. Just the obligatory birthday cards and group texts. But suddenly she was standing at their front door, shaking, holding a manila envelope and asking if she could leave something for me in case I reached out. My mom didn't invite her in. She said no. But she took the envelope. Inside were 10 printed photos. Photos of us. At the lake. At the grocery store. In our old apartment, eating pizza on the floor surrounded by unopened boxes. And a note, handwritten on the back of a receipt. I was selfish. I thought I could have both the rush and the foundation. You were my foundation. I thought you'd forgive me. I'm sorry I underestimated you. She finally admitted it. Not publicly. Not even directly. But she knew. She knew she'd lost something real. And I knew something she didn't. This wasn't the end. Because I hadn't disappeared to run away. I had disappeared to decide. I didn't open the envelope for 6 days. It sat untouched on the small kitchen table in the cabin, positioned like a guest I didn't invite. Every time I walked past it, I felt something tug at me, a dull pull of curiosity or maybe guilt. I wasn't sure. The pictures, her handwriting, the trembling apology, I knew it wasn't for me. Not really. It was for the version of me she thought still needed her. But I wasn't that man anymore. At least I was trying not to be. Still, something about the last line, "I thought you'd forgive me," kept playing in my head like a haunting refrain. Not because I was considering it, but because she was still gambling on that card. As if after everything, I'd fold back into her orbit like nothing had happened. I gave in on a rainy Thursday. The kind of rain that doesn't pound, it whispers. I made coffee, sat down, and slid the photos out. They were exactly what I expected. Carefully chosen. All soft light and candid laughter. Staged memories from a reality that had already expired. And her note, shaky, rushed, smudged in one corner. But I wasn't reading it for sentiment. I was reading it for something else. Something beneath the words. And then I saw it. It wasn't part of the letter, but it was there folded into one of the photos by accident, like it had been tucked in and forgotten. A printed boarding pass. Miami to New York. Dated the morning after the bachelorette weekend ended. Except it wasn't her name on the ticket. It was his. L. Dunford. The name from the couple's massage. The name I saw in the reservation records I quietly pulled from her synced email weeks earlier. He wasn't just a stranger from a reckless night in Miami. He wasn't a one-time mistake. He had flown back with her. On the same flight. I stared at that boarding pass like it had teeth. Why would she have his boarding pass? Why would she keep it, bring it home, slide it into an envelope of apology like it didn't mean anything? And why hadn't she mentioned him once? The answer came in waves. She didn't bring it by mistake. She wanted me to find it. She wanted me to know, without saying it, that it wasn't just a mistake, that it had become something else. And most terrifying of all, maybe she still wanted it to continue. That's when the clarity hit me. She hadn't come to my parents' house to apologize. She had come to provoke a reaction. The remorse was real, sure, but not deep enough to stop her from playing games. She wanted to see if I would chase, if I'd get jealous, if I'd fight for her, if I'd crack under the weight of imagining her with someone else. I didn't. Instead, I smiled for the first time in weeks. Because I finally saw the whole board. She hadn't changed. Not really. She had just lost the upper hand. She was flailing, pulling whatever levers she had left. And the boarding pass was her last move, one final emotional landmine, hoping I'd step right on it. But she underestimated me again. Because I wasn't going to step on it. I was going to pick it up and walk away with it. The next morning, I wrote a message. Not to her. To him. I found his email easily, corporate directory for the marketing firm she used to freelance with. It was there all along, attached to a press release from 2 years back. I didn't send threats. Didn't call him names. I didn't even mention her directly. Just 3 lines. You flew back with her. I know. Ask her what she left in the envelope. Then ask yourself if you're next. I hit send. No signature. No traceable IP. Just silence. The way I knew it would burn best. And that was when I finally understood. I wasn't running anymore. I was writing the ending. I didn't expect a response. That email wasn't designed to open a conversation. It was a splinter, meant to lodge under his skin and itch until he couldn't ignore it anymore. But barely 12 hours later, in the middle of the night, I got a reply. One word. No subject line. No greeting. Just, why? At first, I laughed. Not out loud, not joyfully, more like an exhale wrapped in disbelief. Why? What kind of question was that? But then I realized something important. He hadn't responded because he was angry. He was confused. That meant she hadn't told him. Not everything. Maybe not anything. So I waited. 3 days went by. No follow-up. No typing bubbles. No activity from Arlena on any of the digital shadows I still had access to. Then finally, something broke. Her Instagram, usually active like a humming engine, went dark. No stories. No updates. Not even likes. Then I noticed a ripple, a tiny one at first. Someone from her circle posted a vague status on Facebook. When you build your house on someone else's grave, don't be surprised when it sinks. Cryptic, but not meaningless. A few hours later, another post surfaced. This time from Maris, her closest friend. I'll never defend someone who lies to everyone just to keep playing victim. It spread quickly. Comments turned off. Then deleted. Something was happening. I didn't know what exactly, but I knew the burn had reached the edges of her new life. The next day, my sister called. She didn't say hello. Just asked, "What did you do?" I played dumb because I had to. She sighed. Arlena showed up at Dad's office. She looked wrecked. Puffy face, sunglasses, hair not done. She gave him a letter. Didn't say a word. Just left. I swallowed. What was in the letter? She said she's leaving town for a while. That she's ashamed of who she became. And that she hopes we forgive her, even if you never do. She was running. Not because I had threatened her. Not because I outed her. But because the story she'd crafted was crumbling and not from outside attacks. From the inside. The moment I sowed doubt in the only man left on her side, her whole facade began to collapse. Because here's what I've learned. Liars can hold a version of the truth in their hands like a glass sculpture. It only takes one hairline crack, one sliver of doubt, for the whole thing to shatter under its own weight. And Dunford? He was the crack. I got one more message from him. A longer one this time. I confronted her. She swore it was nothing. That you were manipulating things. But when I asked her what was in the envelope, she turned white. Wouldn't answer. She left. I don't know where. I didn't even get a goodbye. And then the part that stayed with me. If it means anything. I didn't know she was engaged. She said you were on a break. I never would have touched her otherwise. I didn't believe him. Not completely. But I didn't need to. Because now he was haunted by the same question that used to plague me every time she smiled too long at her phone or stayed out late and said, "Just one more drink." He would wonder, obsess, replay, and eventually realize the truth. She had never chosen either of us. She had chosen herself. I closed the laptop, sat back, let the rain tap gently on the roof of the cabin. And for the first time in months, I felt the weight lift, not in a dramatic way. No fireworks. Just stillness. A steady quiet. But Arlena wasn't done yet. Because the moment you disappear from someone's life is the moment they start rewriting your role in their memory. And the final part of her story was still coming. 2 months after she vanished from her own chaos, I heard from Arlena one last time. Not a call, not a knock at the door, just an email. No subject line again. A full circle, I suppose. Her words were polished, rehearsed. She thanked me for not humiliating her publicly. She said she was working on herself and had started therapy, which might have been true or just another mask she'd learned to wear. But buried in all her gentle phrasing and dressed-up remorse, she left a final request. I'd appreciate it if we could meet someday. Not to rekindle anything, just to find peace. I didn't reply. Not out of hatred. Not even anger. But because I'd already found my peace, and I didn't need her in the room to keep it. That same day, I packed the last of my things from the cabin. I donated the old clothes, recycled the notebook I'd been journaling in, and left the burner phone in the woods, battery drained and buried under moss. I was done being a ghost. I moved across the country. Quietly. No grand declarations. I got a new job, nothing flashy, just stable. Found a small place near a lake, where the wind feels like it has something to say, and the nights are finally quiet enough for me to hear myself think again. It wasn't instant healing, but it was real. One day, at the new job, I stayed late fixing a glitch in the system that no one else noticed. I was walking out of the office when someone from the graphics team stopped me. Her name was Hallie. She asked if I always worked late, or if I just didn't like people. I laughed, probably for the first time without bitterness in over a year. She didn't look like Arlena. She didn't act like her either. She was calm, direct, curious. Over the next few weeks, we shared coffee breaks and long silences that didn't feel heavy. She didn't ask about my past, and I didn't overshare. We just existed next to each other, and that, somehow, felt more intimate than any love letter ever had. I never told her everything. Maybe someday I will. Maybe not. But the best part? She doesn't need to fix me, or rescue me, or turn me into something I'm not. She just sees me, not the ghost of a man who disappeared, not the backup plan someone threw away and tried to reclaim. Just a guy who once stood in a kitchen with a blender humming and a heart breaking, and who eventually learned how to breathe again. And that, in the end, was enough. I didn't win. I didn't get revenge. But I found myself. And somehow, that turned out to be the greatest ending of all.